Got a little side hustle going on, a little side gig action, wondering how that's going to affect your retirement plans, your strategy, or just while you're still working. Let's get into it this week here on the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with Scott Osborn and see what's going on. Here we go.
We've got some turbulence up ahead.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for hanging out with Scott and I as we talk investing, finance, and retirement. What's going on, my friend? How you doing this week?
Great, Mark. How about you?
Hanging in there, man. Hanging in there, doing good stuff and trying to hopefully help some people with useful nuggets of information, as we always do.
Oh, yeah.
And, you got a lot of clients that, they're out there doing their thing, but maybe they're still doing some stuff on the side, or maybe you got some potential clients that are thinking about working with you and are thinking, hey, what do I do with this side gig? Like, how does that affect my overall, portfolio and taxation and strategies and all that kind of stuff? So let's talk about that a little bit this week. Do you see some of that?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, it's unique with pilots because they have, when they're working. They got long days. They're, on their trips, they got a block of time where they're just like out of pocket. Yeah. But when they're not, they have pretty good amount of free time compared to a lot of other people just stuck in that 9-to-5 grind.
Right.
And then you get home at 5:30 and you run the kids to their sports and then make dinner and then you're tucking them in and then all over again tomorrow.
A little bit like the military or first responders, right? You have several days on, you may have several days off.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Ultimately that lends itself towards a lot of these guys and gals really having the opportunity to explore some of their, competence or profession outside of flying,
sure,
or some of their other passions, and kind of put that to work. And that might come in a multitude of ways.
Yeah. Do we see that with guys that are and gals that are still working, but also with retired airline folks?
Yeah,
actually already in retirement.
Yeah, a lot of the folks that by the time they retire, there might be a side gig, quote unquote, here or there. I would say real estate's probably the most common thing that we'll see as part of somebody's retirement.
Sure. Let's talk about that one first. Yeah. So
and
a lot of people would like to do that.
Real estate is obviously a huge one that people love to get into. First of all, it gives them a place to deploy some of their capital, some of their excess funds, maybe from flying that they don't need all the money that they're making.
And if they're like your dad, they just want to fix stuff.
Exactly. That's right. And candidly, it is a great way to start to build additional wealth. Get a couple rentals and you're using other people's money to pay the mortgage down and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what I typically see with that one, it's interesting. Once you get to like 3 or 4, a lot of the guys will be like, man, I got to start really thinking about getting a management
property manager
to take care of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it really starts to get just to be a little bit of a time suck. Right. And the last thing you want to do is be dealing with, you're on a trip and you got a toilet that's not working right and you're making phone calls.
Your phone's blowing up.
Or asking your wife to do it for you. And that's the stuff that gets a little bit old when you're, a landlord, but it comes with the territory. So, but that's a really common way.
I would imagine consulting might be in this industry. Would consulting be?
I don't see a ton of consulting. While guys are building their hours, a lot of them will be doing they'll be like a certified flight instructor, which a lot of times they'll get paid as a contractor for that.
Okay. Maybe that's what I was thinking more as like teaching others how to fly or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. But by the time they get to the major airlines, a lot of them are like, I'm good, as far as instructing goes and that kind of thing. So
gotcha.
Plus they're flying a lot too. But if there is some other way that they're teaching, whether it's, I don't know, maybe they're teaching a university class or they are doing some flight instructing or some other consulting. I would kind of throw that into what I would call like the passion projects.
Okay.
Real estate's a common one. Passion projects is another common one. And those passion projects are really around, man, this is something I really enjoy and I'm exploring a way to get paid for it. So it could be flight instructing. But I've seen stuff where, guys are building firearms.
Well, the internet, Shopify and Etsy and all these things make it easy. If you're like really good with your hands, right? Metalwork, woodwork, whatever.
Yeah. An Etsy store for, different, handcrafted wood things. And it's like, again, they have some of that time, wife's at work, kids are at school. I got some time here and, Some of them are like our last episode. Some of them are spending that time doing DIY on their investments and financial plan. And then some of them are saying, hey, I want to explore some of my other passions. And
Yeah, I'm building guitars in my spare time. Right?
yeah, there you go. And some of those, I mean, they can get to be pretty lucrative at times. And they get real busy and they start making some pretty good money doing that. And, I think that's really, to me, one of the key things is like, what are we doing with that extra money, And if I'm making it through some sort of side gig, there's a lot of benefits that you can really leverage, right?
Okay,
So
like
off the top of my head, I think of, really start an LLC, get a shell company there that you can have all the revenue and expenses tied to. And once you have that in place, you can start to do things like open up a SEP IRA for yourself and, make employer contributions.
fund that nest a little bit more, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's some tax efficiency there too. So you're not just making the money and it's sitting in a bank account as, after tax income, but no, we can build our investments out a little further, and then this is, if you got a side gig, I highly recommend you get with, Jason, one of our CPA partners, and really explore all the benefits out there. Because again, especially if it's starting to grow, if you're making $5,000 a year in your side gig, probably not too big a deal. But if you're starting to get some decent revenue from it, you really want to make sure that you're leveraging mileage off of your vehicle. You're leveraging, your home office workspace and all the square footage there. All those different things that you can do. Can you pay your kids at all to help with the business? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different things that you can kind of just checklist it out and go through. Hey, could I do any of these things? And you start stacking them up. A lot of tax efficiency to be had there. And right now for our pilots, one of the big challenges is that the standard deduction's gotten so high.
Yeah.
That unless you're donating an incredible amount of money,
right,
charitably, it's hard as a W-2 employee to really exceed the standard deduction at all. But if you can get a small business going and really get, some good revenue coming in and a good amount of deductions, you can really start to drive some good tax efficiency to make sure that you're not only taking advantage of all the deductions that are out there and getting more than that standard deduction for yourself, but then also taking advantage of all the investment opportunities with the cash that you're making to, again, drive a little bit more tax efficiency in the money you're saving for retirement.
Yeah, I think the standard deduction for 24 is $29,200 for married filing jointly and $14,600 for single. So it takes a lot to get to there, right?
It does. It does. Yeah. So, and the other piece of that that I really like is diversification of income. I've always had multiple income sources. I've always liked having multiple income sources. A lot of our guys that fly for the airlines, they're still flying part-time for the Guard. And so many of them just hang on to that Guard gig because they're like, hey, I'm building up my pension. I'm building up other retirement assets over there. I have another paycheck. It's providing me cheaper healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. I think diversity of income is not a bad thing either. Now, I don't have a single pilot whose side gig, or let me say this, I don't have a single pilot where flying is their side gig. I do know they're out there, but that's not the norm. The norm is the airline income is typically going to be the bulk of what the priority income is. But that said, having another skill that as you get older that you could do into retirement, or if you have some sort of medical issue that prevents you from flying in the future, that you have another skill that you can fall back on to make money for your family. It's not a bad thing.
Well, and we didn't even mention the fact that you may not have a side gig as a pilot because you're busy with the major airline gig, but maybe your spouse is, right? Maybe you're setting something up for them. Maybe they're great with, painting or crafting or whatever, right? So again, it's still something to look at as a couple.
Yes, absolutely. And again, that kind of piggybacks on a couple of our other earlier episodes where we're talking about having one common plan for the household, not looking at the retirement plan as a plan for the home, plan for the couple, not just what do I have going on and what money am I making?
Great point. All right. Well, anything else to think about when we're talking about side gigs when it comes to, just some X's and O's or anything else you want to toss in there?
The only other thing I would say on the side gig thing is if you're a pilot and you're like, hey, I don't have one, but I'm finally settled in and my seniority is high enough. I got good flexibility. I'm making good money and I got a good handle. It takes a few years to really get your feet under you in the airline. Okay. I've heard. And, I think when you get to that point and you start to have some of that free time, I do think that is a time to, if you're considering it, really try to find something that you have some passion around. Again, if you don't like looking up cheap homes on Zillow and trying to think how you could get a good return on the income, don't force yourself to do it. Don't do it. Don't force yourself to get into real estate because you feel like you're supposed to. Okay. Yeah. We can figure out how to deploy your capital elsewhere to make you wealthy. All right. But if there are things you're passionate about, man, carve a little bit out and bet on yourself too. You know, obviously if you're at this point in your career, you are a talented, intelligent person. So bet on yourself too. Go find a side gig that you're passionate about and, you know, invest in hiring the right coaches and trainers to give you the best skill set that you can, just like you had to do when you were a younger pilot. And then, you know, go deploy some of your time and resources there too. It can be a lot of fun and be lucrative too. So.
There you go. Good advice, man. Good stuff. All right. Thanks for hanging out, folks. As always, we appreciate your time. Of course, if you got questions, need some help, talk with the airline advisor, talk with Scott, and get yourself onto the calendar at retireairlines.com. That's retireairlines.com. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Ring the bell, notifications, all that good stuff so you catch new episodes when they come out. Certainly, we appreciate your support of the channel. And if you got those questions, again, check in the links below. You can always just click on that to get some time on Scott's calendar from there. We'll see you next time here on the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with Scott Osborn.
See y'all.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.